You know, brothers and sisters, that there are some fundamentals that they cannot be breached. Believing in Allah and believing in His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and believing in Islam, that it's the correct religion exclusively. A person can't have less than that. This is a fundamental. If a person has less than that, he's not a Muslim. And let me remind you that there are some excuses for blasphemy. Like if a person's tongue slipped, he meant to say something that's not blasphemy, but he accidentally said something that is blasphemy. He's excused. Or a person was crazy or sleeping, then he's excused. Or under a credible death threat, then this one is excused if he hated the blasphemy in his heart. Or if someone is conveying another person's blasphemy and he has a citation, then this one is excused from the blasphemy that he is inserting in his conveyance. It's not going to be against him. And then there's another case that has some details. It's important for a person to know. We've learned that before, and it is a case that requires review and understanding. And this is a case, brothers and sisters, that really is one of those cases that tells you the difference between someone who is firm in the knowledge of the belief and someone who's not, which is the case of the one who made a mistake. Did he commit blasphemy or he didn't commit blasphemy? Right there, just that title makes you know that to get that right, then you need to be not weak in this issue. When would a person commit blasphemy for making a mistake? And when I say he makes a mistake, I mean he wanted to be right. He wanted to be correct, and he was wrong. Could he blaspheme? Yes, he could. Sometimes he would, sometimes he might not. When would he blaspheme? Despite his inference, despite his effort to arrive at the truth, he would blaspheme if his mistake is against the definitive evidence. The very clear, indisputable, definitive evidence. Like the example the scholars gave and what we learned from what was copied from the explanations of Minhajul Talibin and the commentaries of the explanations of Minhaj or explanation of Minhajul Talibin by An-Nawawi, with the Sheikh copied for us in As-Sirat from those sources and other sources. That an example they gave was like if someone believes that something other than Allah has no beginning, that the world has no beginning. That's his conclusion. That's what he got to at the end, that the world has no beginning. And to get to that end, he has a premise, he has proof, he has hadith, he has argument. And all of what he has there led him to this end, that the world has no beginning. So what's his judgment? He's a kafir, with no doubt. Likewise, if someone said Allah has sides from all directions, that's what he came to at the end. And for this result, that Allah has sides from all directions, for this result, he has arguments and references. So it means he has an inference. What's his judgment for what he arrived at? He's a kafir for sure. Here it's not said that because he was attempting to arrive at the truth that he's excused from his blasphemy. If someone told you that, then you know that this one is not strong in this matter of aqidah. Or it could even be said in the matters of aqidah. It is very, very important here case. Like, this is a keystone case here. This is a case that if that block is missing for a person, he's going to be in trouble, and he might give people wrong advice. Or what's another case? Like if someone said hellfire comes to an end. If someone said hellfire comes to an end, this is blasphemy, even if he has some argument and some reference to say otherwise. What's contrary to that? Are there mistakes that some people made, but they weren't deemed as blasphemers? Yes. Like what? Like the case at the time of Abu Bakr, when some people thought that zakah was not obligatory after the death of the Prophet because of an ayah that they misunderstood. Now, I'm just not going to say all of that to keep my words a little bit brief here at the end of the lesson. The companions did not deem those ones as blasphemers because of the nature of their mistake, how they misunderstood the ayah and thought that because the ayah was commanding the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam that by the Prophet's death, then the judgment was nullified, and that they didn't believe that Abu Bakr had the right to take their money. The companions did not deem them as kuffar for this mistake. Or like when some people had, at the time of Umar, drank alcohol. Not just they drank it, they legalized it. That's the issue. They legalized it because they didn't understand the prohibition in the ayah. فَهَلْ أَنْتُمْ مُنْتَهُونَ? Are you going to quit? That's in the form of a question, but it's really forbidding them. They didn't understand the prohibition from this question. Not to mention that there was a time when alcohol wasn't haram, and then it became haram. So Omar, when he knew about these who legalized wine, he did not deem them as blasphemers. When he knew the nature of their mistake, he did not deem them as blasphemers. He said, whip them 80 times each, and if they legalize it again, then execute them. So, yes, sometimes a person could make a mistake, and he wouldn't be a kafir because of the nature of his mistake. But sometimes a person would make a mistake and he would be a kafir despite his inference. So those mistakes that I mentioned, like saying something other than Allah has no beginning. Ibn Taymiyyah said that in more than one book, in more than 5 books. And saying that Allah has sides from all directions. Ibn Taymiyyah said that. And he argued for it extensively in his book, Bayanu Talbisi al-Jahmiyyah. He argued for it. And hellfire coming to an end, Ibn Taymiyyah wrote a whole book about it. So it's one thing to say some scholars didn't deem Ibn Taymiyyah a kafir and stop there. That's one thing. If someone just stopped there, okay. That's not a big disaster to say that and stop there, because there's plenty of people whom the scholars differed about, or a number of people whom the scholars differed about whether they were kuffar or not. And then you can discuss why or what happened there. But it's another thing to say some scholars didn't deem Ibn Taymiyyah a kafir because he inferred and arrived at his mistake by way of an inference. He was trying to arrive at the truth, but he slipped. And so, based on that effort that he put, some scholars said he's not a kafir. That's a very, very, very great blunder. It's a massive, massive, massive blunder. So, mashallah, may Allah protect us. And we have brothers and sisters who have learned So make sure that when you hear someone saying some things, that they're not right, you have to say something to them. Even if that's your man, you have to say something to him. Lillahi ta'ala. For the sake of Allah, you can't be silent about that. Some people are maybe saying some things like that, and brothers who know better are right there in the session. They're not saying anything. So we know what's going to happen, Yani, if a community of people stop bidding the good and forbidding the evil. That's going to be a disaster for the community. So that's what I want to say for tonight. Do you have any question I can answer for you?